and welcome back to the Fall Joann Stitch-Along with Yarnspirations. I'm your host, Marley Bird, and in this video 4 of a 4-part series, we are going to finally assemble our cardigan and add some ribbing around the hem, around the collar, and around those sleeves. This is not that difficult of a task, and honestly, because you already know how to pick up and knit stitches, you should breeze right through this. I think the trickiest part here is the construction of the cardigan, and I want to show you how to do that before we jump into the actual putting it together. So go ahead, grab your instructions. The link is in the video description box right down there below. Make sure you have your homework and all of your materials with you so that way we can bring this cardigan to a close. Okay, looking down here, you can see the assembly diagram for this piece, and it looks a little bit confusing. We have completed panel 1, panel 2, and panel 3. You can see that right here, 1, 2, 3. And what is going to happen now is this corner of panel 1 is going to come down here to the bottom corner of panel 3. And this corner of panel 2 comes down here to this corner of panel 3. Now, because my little tiny swatch is not to scale, it is a little tricky to do that, because if I bring this down here to this, it kind of really adds a lot of bulk up here. It's fine here for my little swatch, and your piece won't actually look like that. It'll be a little bit more smooth. But for this one, this is what you're doing. You're bringing this corner down here to meet up with this, and this corner down here to meet up with this. And what that does when it's done right is this opening here and this opening here, those are your sleeves. Now, if I were to turn this around, this is the part that I'm saying it's really not to scale, because you're like, well, what is this? Well, this is actually the front of your sweater, and it should actually be looking something like that. Here's the deal. I don't know if you realize this, but the cardigan I have been wearing through all of these videos is the exact same construction as the cardigan you're making. The only difference here is that instead of having 2 panels for 1 and 2, this panel up here is one complete piece of fabric. So as I turn to the side, you can see that gray area in the back, that light gray, that would essentially be my panel 3. That was connected to my panel 1 and 2. So can you see down here underneath my arm, right here, let me see right here, this is where the corner of my panel 1 or 2 meets up with the corner of my panel 3. And can you see right here where the ribbing just goes right across that? This is what you will be doing. So this opening here, this is my sleeve. I did not add any ribbing to my sleeve for this particular pattern. I didn't want any ribbing, but this is the shape you're creating. Isn't that cool? You didn't know that this was the same shape as you were working along, but now you do. So you can clearly see that as the panels 1 and 2 are worn and they rest on the body, they lay nice and flat. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit my microphone. They lay nice and flat over the bust, and that panel 3 really acts as the bottom part of your back. All right, this collar here is added after the fact, just like your collar is, and we start off with the hem down here, just like we do on yours. So here's what I've done. Let's go ahead, move this aside. So like I said, this little piece was a little bit too short for me to work with. So I went ahead and whipped up one that was just a little bit larger. It's not absolutely perfect. I actually forgot to do the 2 rows of blue right there between panels 1 and 2. Neither here nor there. However, this gives me a little bit more fabric here to bring down and meet up. So this is what I'm going to use for demonstrations for this particular video. Okay, so I still have my yarn on a holder. I chose to leave my yarn on some needles here. And what would happen is you're going to take this corner and come down, and the instructions literally say just to tack it to that corner. So if you wanted to, you could just grab a stitch marker and kind of hold them together if you wanted to. You could go ahead and just take some yarn and just kind of whip it together if you wanted to. Or if you want to be daring, I mean, honestly, this is what I would do, is I would just leave those stitches there like that. And instead of actually tacking it to the corner, I would just start working across right there. That's what I'm going to do. Now, in the instructions, it also says that this portion that we will be working here is done with color B. And as you know, I have color A still on my needles. So I will go ahead and cut off my color A here. And I'm going to get rid of it so that way it's just yarn hanging out here, okay? And here's what the instructions tell us to do. It actually says we're supposed to grab our longer needles, and starting down here at this edge right here of panel 2, we're going to pick up and knit a certain number of stitches all the way over to where this join would be. Then you pick up the stitches that you have on a holder and you knit across that number of stitches, okay? So now we have all of these stitches on a needle, and you'll come over here and you pick up and knit stitches along this edge. So now you're going to have cable or ribbing stitches all along this piece here, and these little sections here are going to be open for your sleeves. So here's what I'm going to do. Because I have this on the needle here, I'm just going to leave it there. I'm going to grab the other end of my needle, come up here to this corner, and I am going to pick up and knit the number of stitches I need to get to this edge of my piece. All right, so follow along with the number of stitches that are written in your pattern for the size you're making, and literally just go into each of the stitches. So these are the bind off stitches that we did, right? So I'm just going to go into each of those bind off stitches and pick up and knit. Okay, so we pick up and knit all the way around. I shouldn't say around, I should say across. And like I said, you can tack this corner down as what's written in the pattern, but let's just kind of see how this looks right here, okay? I'm gonna go to this corner, pick up everything I want in that corner. Hold on a second, I don't like that one. There we go. Okay, so now I have over here, right? These are my stitches that I have on a holder. Well, I'm just gonna knit across them. I'm just gonna knit across these stitches, okay? So I'm gonna pretend that this is just joined. I'm just going to knit across these stitches. When I get to the last stitch over here, okay, my needle's free. I bring this corner up, right? I'm going to start down here. Normally this would just be tacked over here, right? But I'm just going to find the last stitch of this corner and just put my needle through it, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Just like we did at the other end, you just go in, yarn over, and pull it up. Okay? The most important thing here is just make all of your stitches that you pick up look pretty even and consistent, because this is where your ribbing is going to go. And get all the way to the corner, okay? Whatever you do, get all the way to the corner. Don't leave any stitch left behind. And notice I did already weave in all my ends, it just makes it easier. But now I have all of these stitches on my needle, right? You have a nice long needle because yours is much bigger than mine. So your nice long needle is really going to come in handy here. But as you can see, these slits right here, those are my sleeves. So just like on my sample that I'm wearing, that's that opening right there. That's my sleeve opening. Pretty neat, right? Okay, now that we have all these stitches picked up, we turn our work and we will work back along this row, and we're going to do our ribbing. So our very first stitch here is a purl one, and then we knit one, and we're going to do that all the way to the end. Purl one, knit one, and just keep going, okay? When you get to the end, Simply turn your work, and we continue on working ribbing. So you will knit your knits and purl your purls. And you just keep doing this until your section here, your hem, measures as long as you want it, or 3 inches. That's what's written in the pattern. So let's go ahead. We would turn our work, and our first stitch is a knit, and then purl, and then knit, and then purl, so on and so forth. Go ahead, continue on with the ribbing on yours. I'll continue on with mine. And when we get to a length that we want to keep, that's where we will bind off in pattern. So I want to show you how to do that. So I'm going to get a little bit of ribbing happening here on my little tiny swatch. Okay, when your ribbing is as long as you want it to be, you want to end after a wrong side row. So you're going to turn your work, and we will bind off in pattern. All that means is as we work each stitch off of our left hand needle, we will work the stitch as it is presented. So we will knit the stitch, purl the stitch, knit the stitch, purl the stitch. And then we have them bind off just like we normally would. So right here at the start, we would knit one and then purl one, have the back stitch, jump the front stitch. The next stitch is a knit, so I would knit it, back stitch, jumps the front stitch. Next stitch is a purl, so I purl, back stitch, jumps the front stitch. And we do this all the way to the end. So whatever the stitch is on your left hand needle, you will knit it or purl it, depending on what it's supposed to be, and then have the back stitch, jump the front, just like you normally do. And this is binding off in pattern. So when it comes to your ribbing, you can have it as short or as long as you want it to be, just as long as you bind off in pattern with the right side facing you. It will come out looking pretty good. Just remember, anytime you make alterations when it comes to size, you might need more yarn, or you could use less yarn than what you originally had planned. So just plan accordingly when it comes to that. But with the ribbing here, you can see you get in a pretty good rhythm. And I'm just making sure that as I go along, if I see a purl, I'm purling it, and then I bind off. If I see a knit, I knit it, and I bind off, so on and so forth. And this is how you will bind off for the collar ribbing and for the sleeves, or you could think of it as the cuffs. It's the exact same thing. So what you're learning right here is going to be used for the other 2 parts as well. So you really have learned everything you need to know to complete this cardigan. Isn't that amazing? All right, let's get to the end of this little ribbing right here and see what this looks like. And then we can tackle the next bit together, which would be the front panels and the collar. And I mean, at the end of the day, if binding off in pattern is a little bit tricky for you for whatever reason, you can just bind off normally if you wish. However, I would encourage you to bind off in pattern because it's just that little bit of something extra in the finishing that makes your work look a little bit more polished. All right, so I'm at the end here. I bound off. And I will go ahead and cut my yarn because in the instructions, it tells me that the other ribbings, they're done in different colors. So I will pull this out. Let's see what we have here. Remember, those are the tails of what I just had. So as I fold this like so, look at that. So this is where your head would go. This is your body. And here are your little tiny sleeves. Isn't that great? Like, this is literally the shape I have on. It's the shape I have on. There's your sleeves right there. Okay? So that's where we are so far. The next part, it wants us to go ahead and we would pick up and knit along our panels here. So you would pick up and knit evenly along the front edge of the opening, and you're going to work across the bottom part here of your ribbing. So you pick up along the ribbing down here, work along the opening all up here, all the way around and back down here. And you would do that just as evenly as you did before. Again, you can use your stitch markers to divide everything up if you want, so that way you can have it evenly spaced out. You guys know how this works. So if I come here, let's just say, so we put one over here, try and evenly space with that one, and try and evenly space with this one. All right, so now I've sectioned it off 1, 2, 3, 4. Now 1 and 4 are a little bit bigger than these two, but I could play around to try and get the same number of stitches, at least in each of those sections, okay? So if I were to do this time, I'm supposed to use my main color. Okay, it says to use the main color for this portion. So let me grab the blue here. All the way to the edge. 7. I mean, looks pretty good to me. And it's at that point you would turn and we jump into our ribbing again. So as I come up to my markers, I will just remove them because I don't need them. They were there just for my picking up and knitting, right? So purl the first and then jump in. Okay, now that all of these stitches are picked up, you will work in the knit 1, purl 1 ribbing sequence once again until this collar section measures 3 inches or as far as you wanted to. Then you bind off and pattern again. Once you have bound off your collar in pattern, it looks a little something like this. Again, this is not to scale by any means, but you can see this is your front, this is the collar, here's your ribbing, and if I kind of turn it to the side here, you can see this is where your armhole is. So what the pattern tells you to do now is use the smaller length needles that you have, and you're going to pick up and knit stitches all the way around this armhole, and you will work in the purl 1 knit 1 or knit 1 purl 1 pattern all the way around circularly, so you don't have to turn your work or do any seaming. So that's what you would do right here with your opening. If you don't want to do that, you could always just pick up stitches and then immediately bind them off to keep them nice and neat, just like mine are. Totally up to you. But with that, I think you could absolutely complete this without any more instructions. You know how to pick up stitches, you know how to do your ribbing, you know how to bind off and pattern, and now you know how to do the basic construction of the piece. So the very last thing for you to do is to finish up your piece, take a picture and share with us on social media so we can cheer on your success. We really hope you have enjoyed this stitch along. It is always a joy to be invited back to host these stitch alongs for Joann and Yarnspiration. So I truly hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. Let's go ahead and give a round of applause to the Yarnspirations design team who made this beautiful sample. It is absolutely stunning and it was so much fun to knit. Learning these mosaic stitches, learning this fun construction, and then this very simple finishing just brings it all together. Couple that with this fabulous Bernat Fluffee yarn, and I mean, it is a match made in heaven. I loved working with this yarn so much. I loved making this little tiny sample swatch. I mean, this is adorable. This is adorable. And I hope that you have had fun and love your cardigan as well. And with that, we come to a close for the fall Joann Stitch Along with Yarnspirations. I've been your host, Marley Bird. It has been a delight. I hope to see you around on the next one. Bye-bye.